Orhan, it happened again. Remember the cake I made that we do not talk about? I regret the moment I made the decision to make this cake. Something similar happened this week. I decided to make a giant creme brulee. And I love creme brulee. It's actually one of the top desserts I choose if a restaurant has a good creme brulee. So this is where the problem arises. So I decided that because the best part of the creme brulee is the custard and the sugar, I want that to be a part of the cake. Meaning I didn't want to just cover the top in like light yellow fondant and paint it to look like custard. I wanted custard to be involved. And I should have known better. For the cake portion, I baked a 12-inch round chocolate cake. I picked chocolate cake because I was picturing the cut at the end. I wanted you to definitely notice cake, even though on the top you see custard and caramelization. You know what I'm saying? I leveled it, trimmed the sides so it would have like an A line. It's more narrow on the bottom of the cake. And then I carved scallops into the side, okay? So I made myself a template so the scallops would be even all around the cake.
All good so far.
This is all good so far. When my cake was shaped, I put a toothpick on one side so I'd know where the scallops lined up. That's very important because even though they look identical, it's hand carved, they're probably not identical. So do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
So on one scallop, there's footage. Then I disassembled it, simple syruped both layers of cake. The next step was a bit tricky and took me some time to troubleshoot. So what I'm planning to do is have custard on the top of the cake once I flip it over. But I can't put custard on without the cake being covered on the side because the custard would just spill over the top of the cake. So now what I had to do was figure out how to raise my upside down cake, but I also need to make sure that the lip on the cake is perfect and even. So what I needed to do was leave the cake upside down, find the perfect size circle that was also the perfect height that would support the cake, as well as leave me just enough room for the custard. And then I assembled the cake still upside down. I spread some Italian meringue buttercream, put the next layer on, crumb coated. It's relatively simple, but you gotta make sure that you're crumb coating each scallop. You don't wanna leave, a whole bunch of buttercream. Just take some time to properly crumb coat the entire thing. And then I place the cake in the fridge to chill. Everything is still good at this point.
It sounds...
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds like a lovely day. I took the cake out of the fridge and it's time to ice the cake. Same idea, I used my invention. I think I used my invention, yeah, it makes sense. I just wanna make sure that everything is smooth and the scallops remain intact. So what I decided was I measured the circumference of the cake. I rolled a band of gum paste, okay? I made sure one end of it was very even, smooth, so I wouldn't have to cut it. Then I rolled it up backwards on a French rolling pin, unraveled it around the cake. So that smooth edge of the long band is the top of my cake. And I just smoothed the gum paste into the scallops and a little bit over the cake. It was difficult. I know it looks similar to fondant, but it's much tougher. And you can probably tell while I'm rolling it out and while I'm draping it over the cake. There's a lot of resistance. And then I used a plate, a circular plate, to cut a perfect circle. And then I had to roll more gum paste to fill in that space.
There's like a seam under the cake.
Under the cake. We won't, it's a secret seam. We won't see it. Flip it over very carefully, remove that top cake board, and then I remove that plastic circle that I used for the height on the cake. Everything looks good. Now I need to make the dish look shiny because ceramic is somewhat shiny, fondant is flat, and gum paste is even flatter. So I decided to paint the side just with some water. This will activate the sugars in the gum paste, dissolve them a bit, and give the gum paste a little bit of a sheen. So it's time for custard. To make the custard for my creme brulee cake, I started by pouring 4 cups of whole fat milk, like 3% milk, into a pot and adding 1 cup of sugar. You wanna stir that together and then put it on the heat. In the meantime, I'm going to mix together another 1/2 cup of milk, a 1/2 cup of cornstarch, and 8 egg yolks. I'm gonna whisk those together in a separate bowl. You don't want the milk to come to a full rolling boil. You just want to scald it. So that means you're going to see bubbles around the side. It's definitely warm. And then at that point, you're going to pour in the cornstarch mixture, whisking the whole time over the heat. So you want to keep it on medium heat. You want to whisk this mixture. It will start to thicken rapidly because there's quite a lot of cornstarch. And for the purpose of this custard being placed on top of my cake, I do need it to be as sturdy as can be. Once the custard is done, you're going to want to pour it into a clean bowl. This recipe calls for a 1/3 cup of unsalted butter, so I place that butter into the clean bowl. You can also add your vanilla bean to this mixture. And then you can just whisk it all together. The heat from the custard will melt the butter, and the butter will also stop the custard from cooking. At this point, I'm gonna set my custard aside. Now, you don't want the custard to grow a skin. I know that sounds nasty, but that's what happens. So you wanna cover it directly on the custard with plastic wrap. So I actually made this custard ahead of the cake, making sure it was 100% cold. You'll wanna take off the plastic wrap, and you might have to whisk it together because it will sort of take the form of whatever bowl it was in. Yes, it waited in the fridge, yes, like a good custard. I didn't have to scold it. I poured some right in the center. I'm avoiding the gum paste on the edge. And I used an offset spatula to spread it evenly. And the other thing is you want that layer of custard to be perfectly even because a real creme brulee is poured, so it would be even. You know what I mean? As you pour it, it would just even out. You don't want like a hump or anything like that. So I spread the custard. Now comes the brulee part. Can you add some like horrifying music? You like horror movies, right? Can Freddy Krueger walk in? Can all those people? Whoever's in Saw, who else is there? The clown from It, all of them. Because this was my nightmare. The best part of a creme brulee is a brulee, but when you're bruleeing a creme brulee in a dish, you don't have to worry about the heat hitting the dish. In fact, you can even brulee a creme brulee under an oven broiler. You can put the dish in the oven, let the broiler brulee the sugar and take it out. I can't do that with a cake, so I have to use the blowtorch.
Oh, I see where this is
You see where this is going, right? The blowtorch is great when I'm making a pizza cake and I actually want to burn the fondant. But now what I'm going to attempt to do is burn the sugar that I'm sprinkling on top of the custard, but not burn the gum paste, which has a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
It's like a moth to a flame.
But I did not think of that though.
I did, but I just I didn't let it get to me. And I was like, I'll just avoid it. So I'm bruleeing, and then as I get closer to the edge, I start to heat up the gum paste on one end. And there's nothing I can do, right? It cooks the gum paste. It's not like I can just cut it off or brush it away or paint over it.
Yeah.
It's cooked. So it was in one part, and I was like, I can live with that, because I was planning to decorate these with some icing sugar. I was like, I'll hide that, I'll camouflage it. I started with the back on purpose where the seam was. I couldn't brulee it as much as I wanted, and I couldn't get as close to the edge as I wanted. So I was like, okay, maybe this is just like a crappy creme brulee that you get at a restaurant that's not that good. Maybe that's it. It's fine. Can we just title this video Day-Old Crappy Creme Brulee? Yeah, like you would definitely want it to be darker and more caramelized, but I couldn't do it. Here's the irony of this. Like I said, creme brulee, if I order dessert at a restaurant after a meal, it is either two things. It's either ice cream or gelato or creme brulee. When I get a crappy creme brulee, I get so annoyed. And now I made the creme brulee I get mad at.
Because now like millions of people will know not to cake creme brulee.
First of all, leave a comment below if you were all thinking of making a creme brulee cake and I just saved you. If there's even one comment, I'll feel better. There's gonna be 0. Everybody is at home like, oh, today's the day I gotta make the giant creme brulee cake. How am I gonna brulee it? I wish someone would do it for me. Done. That's it, that's my rant. Enjoy this video because I'm not watching it. And I will see you next week.